All right, episode 200 of Jackman Radio. We are so thrilled tonight to be joined by the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, as well as one of the hosts of the Ron Paul Liberty Port, Mr. Daniel McAdams. How you doing tonight, man?
I cannot imagine two men I would rather spend the evening with. Thanks, guys.
Oh, you're very kind, and thank you for sharing some of your time with us this evening. And lots going on in the news. Let's just get right into it, man. We want to get your take on a few things. And what do you think about what's going on in the White House with this Russian intelligence stuff that Tulsi seems to be digging out and presenting in that 44-page dossier? What's your take on that?
Epstein who? I see. I had you guys on my live, and you popped up on my other computer. Sorry, that just shows how dedicated I was. Yeah, no one's talking about Epstein. I'm excited because and I'm sure you guys too. We struggled through 4 years of RussiaGate, and it hit in ways that were, in my opinion, similar to COVID. How it divided families. My dad was on the other side. My dad, God rest his soul, he bought into it. He watched Rachel Maddow. He was just he was so deep in it, and I'm just kept saying, Dad, come on, it's not true, it's not true. And my dad was a nice guy, wonderful guy. He never got angry, but I could just tell that he didn't believe it, And so for me, it's a relief now in a way. And I sort of pitched the idea of doing the show a couple of days ago. I think yesterday it was to Dr. Paul, and he's like, "So what's the big whoop? We already knew, all this." And yeah, that's true, but we have something concrete now that we can, really point to. We have declassified documents. So I'm glad to see it. Is it political? Absolutely, no question about it. But nevertheless, and by the way, just sorry to ramble a little bit, but am I worried about the idea of trying to prosecute former administration officials? That concerns me, because that's we can talk about that later if you want. As much as I love seeing corrupt people go to jail, that concerns me a little bit. But nevertheless, I'm all, even though I have a lot of reservations about how it's being done and why it's being done, I'm all for it. I'm just glad to see Saint Barack being knocked off the shelf a little bit, Yeah,
it's definitely satisfying. I mean, like you said, anybody who was really paying attention kind of knew the whole time that it was BS and a lot of skullduggery. And quite frankly, Daniel, they spied on my campaign. They did. They bugged Trump Tower, and they put some stuff in the golden toilets, and they recorded some of the conversations I had with Don Jr., and it was very disgusting and very dishonest.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, oh, sorry, Aki, you wanted to make a...
Oh, yeah, no, I was going to say, it's nice to see Obama and Brennan, especially John Brennan. I mean, he's the guy who really went after John Kiriakou, friend of the show and friend of mine, for his courage in exposing our terror program, torture program, and waterboarding. A lot of people forget that wasn't the Bush administration, the neocons who did that. That was John Brennan and Obama. So there is a lot of stuff that I think is yet to be exposed and revealed. And I think Tulsi, in a lot of ways, is just getting started. And, whenever I have the next opportunity to talk to her, I'm going to definitely nudge her. We should start digging up some stuff about the Iraq War, what led to that and who was involved in that. And I'd like to see some of those people held accountable.
Yeah, I mean, she has a terrific legacy if she just goes about declassifying stuff, the crappy stuff that they did. But, we should have thought about this in advance. It would have been a fun game to play on you guys' show tonight, is who's the bigger scumbag, and have two cards and hold one up. Would it be, it's Brennan and Tom Cotton, and we each get to choose and vote. That would have been a blast, because I don't know who I would vote for. They're both really, really bad. But Brennan, for some reason, even though he's not as bellicose as a Tom Cotton or Lindsey Graham, there's something about him that I really effing hate,
He's a real proper ghoul. He's a ghoul's ghoul, if there ever was one.
That's the word, yeah.
I think, wasn't it John Kiriakou, Eric, who was telling us that Brennan was kind of an obscure figure, and he tethered himself to George Tenet. Mm-hmm. How he rose up in the ranks.
He did.
Mainly because they basically told him around Christmas time, look, buddy, you need to find another department that's going to take you, because you're pretty much out the door. So it's just crazy to see how then, of course, Tenet rising up in the Bush years and everything that happened with that. But I think all the declassifications are great. I think it's unfortunate that they're they are serving as or being conflated as a distraction from the Epstein stuff, because I think it's great we got a lot of the MLK stuff out 2 years earlier. I don't know if you've had a chance to follow that story much, or what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. I mean, I wish I had two brains and I could read with one and do other stuff with the other, but I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the public doesn't really realize that the two surviving King children, as well as the family, Coretta Scott King, when she was alive, didn't believe the official government story that James Earl Ray did it or did it alone. And there was actually a court case, I think in the 90s, presided over Judge Joe Brown, did it and said that the FBI was involved, and I think the Memphis police and other unnamed government officials. So it's cool to see that out there, but it's unfortunate that the Epstein thing is kind of overshadowing it. Who do you think the Epstein scandal looks worse for now at this point? Do you think it's really landed on Trump's feet? Because it sure seems that way.
It's hurt him, that's for sure. It's hurt him among his base, and some of them are not letting go at all. For me, it's a concern, but the problem is that people tend to settle on the more prurient aspects of it, the salacious details and things of that sort. But for me, what I think is most important about it, yes, the blackmail. That's one step more important than the salaciousness of this. But I think the most important is that it reveals, I think at least, that basically everything is fake. Members of Congress, the mainstream media, people of authority, people of power, people that we're supposed to look up to as authority figures, of moral, intellectual authority, they're all compromised. They're all bad people. The whole system is a fraud. It's rotten from the inside. And I think that's the real story of Epstein. And not all of these sort of weird pedo or whatever, all this stuff. That's all important. But it shows that we have a system that is extremely sick. We had the change of system in 1989 in Eastern Europe. In Hungary, it was called rendszerváltás, literally change of system. Well, they had their change of system from the Cold War, and they recalibrated and readjusted. Well, we never had a rendszerváltás in the United States. We have continued on a Cold War footing, on a rotten edifice that was constructed by people like William F. Buckley Jr., and we've continued on that. We need to have a rendszerváltás. We need to have a system change in the United States away from the national security state. And I think this exposes the fact that it's there. The question is, what do people do with it? Do they keep talking about pizza shops and perverts and weirdos? Or do they take a couple steps back and look and say, we've got a filthy, rotten system here that we need to do something about?
Yeah, and even today I was reading a story about Netanyahu being in the White House with Clinton in 97 and 98 and basically saying, hey, buddy, we have audio recordings of you with Monica Lewinsky. Let's talk about that. And Lewinsky, Clinton called Lewinsky in a month after the first visit with Netanyahu in 97 to try and come up with a plan, basically saying, hey, he's got this tape of us. We need to both be on the same page if it comes out. And of course, Clinton had I think he had a big meeting in 98 with certain Middle Eastern leaders, and Netanyahu reminded him, we still have that tape. And yeah, I think what he really wanted from Clinton was the release of Jonathan Pollard, which didn't happen until 2015 or something like that Israeli spy. So yeah, I mean that's another whole side of the whole Israel blackmail thing, and I think it speaks to your larger point about what are we going to do about it now, rather than just continuing to focus on, is this person on the client list? Is there all that stuff? I think is a lot of distraction, and it distracts from the bigger picture of power and control.
Exactly, that's it. And my opinion, Israel's a terrible regime. It's run by evil, corrupt people. But you know what? If you get that opening, if you can do it, I mean, we do stuff like that. My good friend Phil Giraldi said, yeah, that was a honeypot. That's what we did. That's what we did. That's how the intel game goes. So they're playing the game as well, and they play it pretty well. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, Netanyahu knew what he wanted from the very beginning. He wanted us to go to war in the Middle East so that they could become greater Israel. And, looks like we're getting there, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, it's just crazy seeing him coming to Congress again as he did before the Iraq War and just beating the same drum. It's almost like, have we learned anything?
Same thing.
Have we learned nothing?
When he comes here, he brings his dirty skivvies.
Oh, yeah,
That's
they literally have to do his laundry.
Can you imagine having to
get the champagne for Sarah too, and the cigars for BB? Did you see the BB Files, Daniel? That documentary?
No, I looked at it, but I didn't watch it. I want to watch it. I have ADHD, so I can't sit still.
Yeah, I told Roger Stone about it, and I said, if you get Trump's ear anytime soon, tell him to watch this.
Yeah.
So that would be good.
He's a survivor, man. It's pretty cool because every time he's gonna go and have a hearing, he eats some bad food, he ate some bad matzo balls, whatever, or he starts bombing another country. I can't go. I got to bomb Syria today, man.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, Golan Heights are waiting for some bombs.
Yeah.
He bugged Boris Johnson's toilet, his bathroom. That was a story that came out. Yeah, I mean
that must have been grim.
Yeah, can you imagine? Bojo had a curry takeout to go, and he found the bug.
Not even bodily functions, but other sorts of things. That Johnson is a bad dude, man. He is a bad dude.
He may have found his.
He's sort of like isn't he sort of like a Musk? He's got kids from like 10 or 15 different women or something, and
probably.
Yeah, he is a sex magnet, man. I mean, he is one hot dude, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you had hair like that, you'd get all the women with that hair. Yeah. So I mean,
I don't know what it is, man.
Yeah, the saddest I've been in a long time was when we did the Iran bombings of the nuclear facilities. I was so bummed and just really upset, and it just really did feel like a total betrayal of those of us who were liberty-minded that did go in all for Trump this time around and urge everybody. What's your main takeaway from that? And I was talking to a friend about this. I think it's crazy to think that there won't be any kind of blowback or anything that we see that comes from Iran, not next week, not next month, but down the line, whether it's the form of a small arms attack here in the States or something overseas. I mean, what do you think could happen, and what's your main thoughts on that?
I would say false flag before anything else. I mean, who has the incentive to do some crap over here? The Israelis do. And it would be very easy for them to do it and make it look like Iran. They can plant stories in the press. The media is going to suck up those stories and reprint them over and over, and you're gonna see something like that. That's what you're gonna see because they know the Israelis know right now that public opinion in the United States is absolutely opposed to them, and it's not just Democrats, young Republicans. If you look at the latest Gallup poll, Pew poll, YouGov poll, absolutely opposed to Israel. They're sick of it. So they know they've got to do something to try to hang on to that last sort of dying boomer group who still loves Israel. And so a false flag would be one way to do it. So I would say, why would the Iranians do some crap over here? What would be the point? They would just get bombed. That doesn't make any sense. And they have no, I'm not saying that they're saints, whatever, but there's no incentive for them to start some stuff here. Is there incentive for Israel? Absolutely, 1,000%.
And they have a history of false flag terrorism.
They're good at it. They're good at it.
They're good at it.
The layer cake.
Yeah.
It seems like the Russian-Ukraine conflict has taken a back seat in the news, but of course that's still raging on. Bodies are stacking up every week. Do you see any end in sight to that, or where do you think that's heading?
It could have ended on January 21st, essentially, because Trump, it's not his war. He could have just said, I wanted Trump to win. I don't vote, so I didn't vote for him, but I wanted him to win. I couldn't stand the other people. I was so sick of them after 4 years. I wanted him to win, but the guy's ego was just out of control, And so instead of just saying, okay, man, it's not my war, that idiot Obama, he's brain dead, all those people are evil, I am out. I'm going to focus on the United States. I'm going to lower regulations. I'm going to get rid of all this green crap. I'm going to make the working man. I'm going to make manufacturing, whatever. All that stuff. Americans love. That's why they voted for him. But instead, he brought in this dopey Keith Kellogg general, failed general, who came up with the stupid idea that he thought was great. It was a turd that he thought was a plunk of gold, and it was a dumb idea. Okay, here's my plan, guys. Okay, Russia's winning. Let's get them to stop fighting and have a ceasefire and then we'll start talking. Well, rearm Ukraine. Well, you can say whatever you want about Vladimir Putin, but he's not an idiot, and he can obviously see through this. He's already been through Minsk 1 and Minsk 2. The Minsk agreements were that exact same thing. He's not going to go for Minsk 3. Not the least of which reason for that if he did that, he probably would get cooed in Russia, but not by the limp-wristed liberals that the Americans like, but by serious hardcore nationalists who want to go to war, who are sick of being humiliated by the West, who want to go to war with the U.S. So he could have easily just ended up by walking away, but he just couldn't help himself. And that's the problem with him. He doesn't have any self-control. He gets a thought in his head and he picks up his phone. That Thomas Massey's lazy, he's stupid, he's ugly, and it's just, take it easy. Bolsonaro, damn it, I'm gonna put some tariffs on Brazil. That pisses me off that they're hassling this guy. It doesn't. The rest of the world, you can imagine what they're thinking. I mean, I don't necessarily care what they think, but it just lacks decorum, I think.
Well, we're going to primary Massey, okay, Daniel? We're going to take him out. We're going to send all kinds of money in to primary him. And Massey's one of the only Republicans who voted sensibly on the big beautiful bill and has the foreign policy chops that are consistent. So, yeah, it's rough to see that, but he stands on principle. So,
yeah, I mean, Trump is palling around with Lindsey Graham, and he hates Thomas Massey. It should be the opposite.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're sending Lindsey Graham over there first. We're gonna put him on the tip of the missile like Dr. Strangelove. He's gonna be riding that thing bareback cowboy style.
I love war, Daniel. Okay, war makes me more than excited. Okay, I'm not gonna say specifically what war does to me, but let's just say it's titillating.
That sounds like
that's. Oh, you went on mute. You went on mute, Daniel. Just as we were talking about Auntie Lindsay. There you are.
Yeah, I think. It said my connection was going bad. Uh-oh, maybe Lindsay did it. But if I could go back to something, if you don't mind, we were talking about Iran for a second, and about whether it would spark back up, and we talked about something happening in the U.S. But I think what's important for people to understand is that Iran burst the false veil of Israel's invincibility. They've never been bombed like that in their entire history. And you can find it on X, but there are several posts about how just one single Iranian bomb destroyed an entire city block in Tel Aviv. And it was it was actually in one of the Israeli newspapers that talked about it. Got outside the censorship. They were able to utilize weapons that nobody in the world knew existed before, and they demonstrated an accuracy with their weapons that shocked the rest of the world. And one of those is, for example, in the forewarned attack on the base in Qatar, the U.S. base in Qatar. Well, President Trump announced that we shot down all of the missiles, and there was political reasons for him to do that. That was an exit strategy which benefited everyone, a de-escalation strategy. Nevertheless, what came out about a couple of weeks later, and you guys may have seen this, is in fact Iran did hit one thing there, and they did destroy one thing, and it was a very, very tiny but extremely important radar installation. It had a very small footprint, and if you look at the photos of that, it was a radar, but it's covered with a sort of a bubble thing. That was the only thing destroyed. There was no burn marks around it. There was no deep rut or any of these things. So they unbelievably accurately hit that one specific thing. And I think that was to send a message. I mean, I know that it was to send a message. Look, our bombs are incredibly accurate. You don't want to go down this path. It's not positive for anyone. And so I think that's what's so important. If the Israelis decide to attack Iran again, and they suck us in, both of us will lose. The Americans and the Israelis will lose, and God help us, because it could go much further than that and much worse than that.
Right. Yeah, it's we don't want escalation, and like you said, yeah, Trump needs to focus on our own country and the benefiting the working man, like you said, and the people that really helped win those 7 swing states and win the election for him.
Yeah, the blue collar has no party. The Dems hate their guts.
Right.
And that was a party. And I think we talked about this when we got together previously. I mean, I come from Democrats on my mom's side. They were always Democrats. They came from Pennsylvania. That my grandfather was in the steel mill, and because Democrats were part of the working man. That's all they want. That's all they cared about. They're the party of the working man, and they're no longer that. They hate the working man. They can't stand the working man, and that's the brilliance of Donald Trump. He understood, and he's still great. If you see him talking, and not only with white blue collar workers, but his ability to connect with black workers, with minorities. I mean, I think he did incredibly well with minorities. They get it. They understand him, and he understands them, and they speak the same language. That could have been such a golden moment for the United States, but it's the same trap. He squandered it on this false god of foreign policy. It sucks everyone in, and it's just such a trap.
Yeah, what's the quote? No matter who you end up voting for, you end up getting John McCain.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
There's a lot of truth. There's a lot of truth to that, whether it's red or blue, and that's why the libertarian message of a humble foreign policy and not getting entangled and involved in these wars is just rings true. And I think especially younger Americans, even younger generations than Eric and I are looking at this, and they're like, man, how does this benefit America? Because even to get into a house now for a young person, you're looking at probably around $500,000 to $800,000. So who's got that kind of money to even get into a house when we're spending all this money on war and giving $10 billion a year to Israel and continuing to arm Ukraine? I mean, I don't know where it's heading, but it doesn't seem like anywhere good.
Yeah, in just those 5 days that we were backstopping Israel and its attack on Iran, I'm sure you guys have seen this. We use up 20 to 25% of our entire inventory of THAAD missiles. Each one of those missiles, I think, is something like $1.5 million. It's more than that, $13 million. Something like $13 million. If they're expensive, let's just put it that way. These are expensive missiles. We used all of them. We can't make them. I think we use the entirety of a year's production of these missiles. We can't produce these missiles. Even though we have $1.5 trillion military budget, we don't seem to have any weapons anywhere. And the weapons that we do have, they're sort of a money laundering scheme. We tell Europe, we tell especially Central and Eastern Europe, like Poland, hey, give all your old tanks, give all your old stuff to Ukraine, and then we'll give you some money to buy new stuff from the military-industrial complex. And these are not the working men. These are jobs, but they're not working man jobs. They are beltway jobs, and that's the big problem,
Yeah, the graft of the DC blob, just the revolving door of it, and it's seemingly never ending. But yeah, Mike, what was the next thing you had? You had another topic.
Yeah, we actually have a question here from Varen Saw for Mr. McAdams. Can you ask Daniel about any memories he has of Michael Rupert? Mike interviewed Ron Paul back in 2002 and did one of the best 9/11 investigations. Wow.
That's a good question.
He wrote the book, of course,
Crossing the Rubicon.
Crossing the Rubicon, about peak oil and 9/11 and the war games and drills that were going on that day. And he was a really early 9/11 researcher.
That's interesting. I don't recall it. I was very new in the office at that time. In 2002, because I came in at late 2001, so I might not have been in the loop with regard to that specific thing. But I was just talking to my son yesterday about how I started getting fascinating with this sort of 9/11 revisionism again, because there's so much more that's come out. At first, okay, here's the story. I don't want to bore you guys, but when 9/11 first happened, I was working in Dr. Paul's office, and we got all kinds of DVDs in. Like Loose Change and all of those ones. You remember them, a big stack. And I would read and I would watch them, and it was kind of edgy. It was like porno, like don't let anyone see you watch it, And I watched it, and I was fascinated. But that stuff was pretty rudimentary, A lot of that stuff was pretty whacked out and not accurate. And my friend Ryan Dawson actually does great stuff on debunking a lot of that early stuff and talking about what really has happened there. But I think there's so much out there that can be that can be learned and can kind of be spoken about without having that stigma of being too much of a weirdo conspiracy theorist, because the conspiracy theories are all true, you know. But I'm looking forward to more coming out about what really happened on 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, you got the lawsuit that a lot of the family members still have going with the Saudi government and the royal family, and Trump's aware of these issues. He's met with the families, and I'm going to look into it. And he doesn't end up doing anything about it. But all the past administrations since Bush have really kicked the thing down the road, and some of the stuff did come out under Biden. They talked about Operation Encore and the Saudis looking at monuments in Washington, D.C. and where to attack and stuff, and with that Saudi access agent who was helping out two of the hijackers. So, yeah, I think
Israeli art students.
The art students, and then the people who were celebrating the burning buildings across the water from the towers they were from the Middle East, but they were not from the country we think they were from.
Yeah, and people that were working in malls and staking out things. There's a lot of stuff there, and it's all interesting to come out.
Yeah, there's a whole report about ecstasy rings and then them infiltrating DEA a DEA investigation. There's a whole bunch of files on that. And yeah, they set up in mall kiosks.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. Yeah,
they use them as fronts, and they were trying to penetrate Defense Department officials, other government buildings, and selling this cheap crap art.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people were tied back to the IDF, high-ranking IDF, colonels and generals and what have you. I mean, all the names are in there. You can go in there and read all the names. And that was leading up to 9/11. Then, of course, on 9/11, the Urban Moving Systems Front Company, which was clearly a front for Israeli intelligence, those guys were seen flicking lighters and posing for photos with the World Trade Center burning behind them. They were celebrating the attacks. And when they went on TV back in Israel after they were detained for 70 days and then sent back to Israel, with Chertoff was involved with that. They went on Israeli TV and said we were sent to document the event. So I want to know who sent them and who knew to go document something.
Yeah, I mean, the best question is always, cui bono, who benefits? And I remember I probably told you on the show, I've said it in many different settings, but I was about half a mile from the Pentagon when the plane hit, so it actually flew over our building. We lived on the top floor and had a skylight, so we actually saw. I was actually reading the Washington Post at the time and drinking a coffee. We saw the shadow go over our apartment building, and we heard the absolute screaming roar. It was one of the loudest sounds I've ever heard. So I felt sort of like intimately connected, and I was actually the first person to call the media in the Washington area to report on the Pentagon being hit. But the thing that the first thought that I had in my mind, although I didn't have the same, I wasn't really interested in Middle East politics at the time. I mean, I really was trying to avoid it. But my first thought was that the Palestinians are screwed. Because I knew that no matter what happened or who did it, they're going to it's like a dog, just keeps getting kicked. Anytime something happens, they kick the dog. And I just knew, I didn't know if the Saudis did, I don't know if Bin Laden did, I don't know if the Israelis did, but I knew that the Palestinians are going to get screwed, and that's exactly what's happened.
Oh, definitely. And another early researcher and a fellow that I found out that you knew, you commented on a post a few months ago, was Mr. John Judge.
John was great. God,
yeah, what are some of your memories of John? And I never got to meet him, so may he rest in peace.
He was a great guy.
What was John?
He was one of those rare people that worked on the Hill who were actually intelligent. Because most of them were 20-year-olds with hormones flaring and a huge sense of self-importance. But John worked for, in my opinion, one of the best members of Congress, and that was Cynthia McKinney. And Cynthia was fearless, man. She was fearless. And she didn't give a crap. And she was strong. They hate that strong black woman who is independently minded and doesn't give a flying you-know-what. So he worked for her as a researcher. I forget exactly his staff title. But we would meet with him quite often. And he was just like just a font of knowledge and such integrity. And I love people like John because I had no idea, nor did I care. Was he left? Is he right? Where is he? I don't care, and he was just such a great guy. And my only regret is that I didn't spend more time visiting with him at the time. It's just, it's such a shame.
Yeah, I think he was a very early proponent around the congressional milieu about JFK assassination research, and I think he was one of the founders of Citizens Against Political Assassinations, and he did unbelievable work on the Kennedy assassination, and he paved the way for a lot of researchers, and I've always looked up to him and his work. So that's cool that you knew him, and where you were there, you were in Congress with Ron Paul when Cynthia McKinney was in there too, man. Talk about based and fearless.
And Kucinich.
Yeah, and Kucinich. And the thing here, listen to this. This is what makes it even better. They were all on the same committee. They were. Oh, well, Kucinich was not, but McKinney and Dr. Paul were both on the House. It was then called the House International Relations Committee, and that's at the time when the committee was chaired by Tom Lantos, who most people don't remember, but who at the time was the king of the hill, right? He was the chairman of the committee, and he was a survivor of a certain event in the past, and also he survived in 1956 in Hungary, so he was a double survivor, and everyone looked up to him. But he was a terrible, terrible person. He was a terrible neocon, and every time. Here's a funny story. I was sitting where staff sit. The thing is, this sounds kind of petty, but everyone guards their turf, and we had staff area when the committee met. And this is before Dr. Paul eventually became. Well, here's something. Eventually, his seniority led him to the back row, the big boy chair, and so I got to stand behind him rather than having to sit in the chairs in the front. So that was like a great moment. Except one time. Colin Powell was coming, and I had an unbelievable sciatic issue, and I took a morphine-based painkiller, right? And I was like, oh, it didn't touch it, so I took another one, and so I couldn't walk. It was if you ever had sciatic, you know how it is. I couldn't walk, and so then now I look and I see I'm standing behind Dr. Paul, but I look like a stupidest person on earth with the dumbest look on my face. But anyway, that's an aside, but it was quite funny. But so Lantos came in, and I was sitting where staff sits, and he said, "Move out of here. My family's coming to sit here." He brought his whole family in. But bringing it back to Cynthia McKinney, every time Lantos said something defending a neocon policy, especially about our dearest and closest ally, I would always look over at Ms. McKinney, and our eyes would meet, and she would roll her eyes, and I would roll my eyes. And I thought, it's so cool to see something like that, because everyone was like this, on the committee, except for, Ron Paul, Cynthia McKinney, a couple of others maybe, but not to that degree,
Wow, that's cool, man, to have a front row seat to that and to have been involved with that. And now you see with Congress, you mentioned the younger people with their hormones. How about former Congressman Santos talking about what's going on in the basement there in the cages and some of what these pages are doing? And was that going on when you were there, or was it more tame, or was it kinder and gentler?
Not in our office. But I love George Santos. He's probably a bad guy, but I love him.
I feel the same way. Yeah.
I think Jim Traficant was like one of the absolute best members of Congress ever. That guy was an absolute legend.
He was a beast.
Legend. We were there when the trial was going on. The trial in the House was going on, and the guy was a legend. That's why they had to take him out. The same was true with Santos, I think. He's no Traficant, but the same is true. But yeah, definitely on a Friday, okay, the members have already gone home, right? They did their last votes on Thursday night. They're gone. And so you walk along the corridors in Rayburn or Cannon or whatever, and there will be like a pulley thing, like, when you go to Home Depot, that thing you push where you put all your plants on it. But it'll be stacked to the top with cases of beer, and that's staffers are going at it. It's party time. And that's what they did. They were all young, and they were too full of themselves. They were so overly self-confident, and that's what they did. They partied, and I'm sure, there were some hormones. Our office, we were older. Most of us were married, so that wasn't an issue at all. But definitely, in those other offices, you're like 25, let's be honest. I don't want to be rude. There are a lot of very attractive women who happen to be also very smart. But let me tell you, these like 50, 60, 70-year-old members of Congress were not choosing women for their brains, right? Because they were all like, they looked like they just came out of modeling, Central. And
They're
that's
like
what they
Charlie
wanted.
Wilson.
Yeah, they were a bunch of old pervs, and that's just a fact. They loved having that around. And, so it was like a frat house. Yeah, it really was like a frat house.
There's the legendary exploits of Teddy Kennedy there, in the late '80s at the restaurants and carousing around with Chris Dodd, and I mean, it's just, I think that's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
I think it probably goes from A to Z in terms of degradation and darkness. With
a lot of
dark,
Yeah, a lot of penicillin was probably prescribed, and it wasn't for the cold and flu season. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's wow, that's crazy, man. Yeah, Santos. I mean, he looks good in a wig too. Let's be honest. He looks pretty good in a wig, and his mother somehow was in the North Tower on 9/11, but also in Brazil. At the same time, it's like it's amazing.
Do you think Lindsey Graham shot a shot with Santos and was turned down because he's too old?
He rebuffed me because I'm a bell who will not tell.
So that's the thing about Santos. That's why they hate him so much. That he exposes them. He ridicules them. They'll take anything, but ridicule they cannot take that.
Yeah, he went on Tucker and he aired all the dirty laundry.
I gotta watch. I haven't watched. I don't have the attention span, but I haven't got to watch that. I'm looking forward to that.
Tucker's evolution's been everything.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about. I think Scott Horton off air. We had him on our 100th, and you're on our 200th, and we've seen figures like Tucker Carlson are having Scott Horton on now. So I think his turn. I mean, Tucker has even said I was in my mid to late 20s, and I was caught up in all of it. And he was a cheerleader for the Iraq War, and it seems like he's kind of doing a turn on that. And do you think that's genuine? I mean, what do you think?
I think Tucker's great. We met him not this past February, but the one before that. We flew down and met him, and we interviewed Dr. Paul, as you know. And not to cast any aspersions on him, but this is the trajectory, as you very well point out. That he started out. He spoke at the Minnesota rally for one of the presidential campaigns. Maybe it's the 12th campaign. I didn't follow him that closely, but he actually left in the middle because Jesse Ventura came up and started talking about 9/11, and he did not want to be associated with this kind of kookiness. And hey, I get it, man. I don't blame him at all for it. He had a career, he had a wife and kids to worry about. But going from that, where he was squeamish about that topic, to the stuff that he does now, it usually goes the other direction, doesn't it? They start out being pretty good, and they get worse and worse and worse. He started out, and he even told Dr. Paul when we were hanging out afterward, he said, when the 08 campaign started, I thought, who's this weird guy talking about the Federal Reserve? Who cares about that? This guy seems like a kook. And then I started reading about it, he said, and I started studying it, and I realized that it actually really kind of is the key to everything. So, it's great someone who is willing to educate themselves and change their opinions. It takes someone with, kind of a humble heart, which we all should have, a humble and contrite heart, to do that rather than the arrogance that permeates Washington, D.C.
It is great to see that, yeah, and having these long form conversations, and it's encouraging. Do you think Congressman Dr. Paul will ever go on with Joe Rogan? Has that ever been thrown out there? I know Rogan's a big fan of his, or he was back in the day.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have him, and I've reached out to some people that I know are mutual friends. And there was a point where they were trying to contact us, and it didn't work. I think it was before, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it was before Rogan moved to Texas, and Dr. Paul really didn't want to fly to California. But I think, yeah, exactly. So, I think it would be great to do, and I think the time is now to do it, I think it would be really cool to do. Dr. Paul has a lot of great memories of Rogan coming out on the Leno show with a cool Ron Paul t-shirt on, So if you're listening to us, Joe, drop it down, brother.
Leno was like, so Joe, what exactly do you like about Ron Paul? And he's like, every word out of his mouth, every single thing he says.
So, yeah, that was cool. And another question here, and we'll from Fire Pixie. Do you think we could ever have another person like Ron Paul again? Is it possible in today's environment?
It is theoretically possible, but the thing about Ron Paul, I mean, I spent so much time with Ron Paul, way more than I spent when I worked for him on the Hill. The thing about Ron Paul that's the most important is not the positions that he takes on this issue or that. It's not his ability to predict what might happen. It's like the internal content of his character, and that is carved into his soul, I think, by God himself, but it's carved into him. He is first and foremost, he is that person. He is that person who worked hard and suffered. I mean, listen, guys, I'll tell a Ron Paul story, and it's infuriating to me, to be honest, because we'll be getting ready to do the Liberty Report, and he loves to print things out. He's old school. He doesn't look on the screen like I do, and he will look at an article, and if it looks like it's too long, it will print too many pieces of paper. He won't do it because he doesn't want to waste paper. You know? That's him. That's him, and that shows his character. He does not want to waste anything, and part of it's because he grew up at the tail end of the Great Depression, or after it had finished, but still was imbued in the sensibility of people from that generation. But that is the building block of who Ron Paul is. It's not in the Fed necessarily. It's not all these non-interventionism. It's the character that he has, and it's not a political slogan. It is literally do unto others what you would have others do unto you, and that is it. And that is the beauty of Ron Paul, because it's a simplicity and it's a humility. And so it's a long way of answering your question. It is possible, but only from people who truly have that same kind of humility. And that's hard to come by these days.
Yeah, he's just a really decent human being. And that's the time that I was fortunate enough to spend with him campaigning in New Hampshire in 2008 and 2012 and meeting him in his office in 2011, Eric, down in D.C.
2011.
We got to talk to Mrs. Paul, his wife, and about the cookbook. And also one thing I noticed when I first met him in 2006, he walked into someone's house and he wiped his feet on the doormat. I've never seen a politician do that. You see them walk in and they're just, where can they get the live shot, and he's just a, in a lot of ways a regular dude, and that just rings true, that authenticity that you speak of.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Before
and
we let
humor. And a sense of humor. Every day, he's had some tough days lately. He's had a couple of little problems, but generally speaking, every day he walks into the studio and he just has a little joke, a little something funny that he says, and it's wonderful. I mean, it just lifts you up. That's just wonderful, very innocent, beautiful sense of humor.
Yeah, it was great when after the Boston Bruins had won the Stanley Cup, and Eric and I were staying in D.C. that week, and we went to visit him in his office, and Eric's wearing a Boston Bruins shirt. He goes, Dr. Paul, are you a fan of the Boston Bruins? He's like, no, but looks like you are.
That's classic.
Just a classic clip,
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. But
Great.
before we go on, touching on Ron Paul, we have the birthday party coming up, the 90th birthday, and I wanted to plug that a little bit here. And if you want to tell the audience what's going on there and where they can get more information on that seems like a really cool event in August.
Stacked lineup.
Yeah, it's neat. I do have to clarify that it's not a Ron Paul Institute event. It's actually being put on by our friends at Young Americans for Liberty. So they're doing all the organization, and we're kind of backstopping them as much as we can. But they're a big organization, and they came to Dr. Paul and they said, hey, do you want to do this? And he didn't think it would get this big. He wanted just to have a little celebration, but they put out a lot of hard work putting this together, and there's going to be a lot of people there. So I hope they have a good time. I hope they just genuinely have fun. That's the important part.
Yeah, that's great. Obviously, the man of the hour, Ron, will be there celebrating his 90th. Our dear friend Tulsi Gabbard, Kennedy, Scott Horton, Justin Amash. I mean, that's a who's who of based and liberty oriented. That's great.
Yeah, so if you want more information on that, folks, you can go to ronpaulbarbecue.com, and I imagine that food will be pretty tasty, if I had to guess.
There is some good barbecue down there. I will say that. So hopefully everyone has a good time. I know they will. Everyone's gonna have a great time.
Yeah, we're hoping to get back to Texas hopefully this fall for a JFK assassination conference that's going on. But it's been a couple years since we've been down there. But when I visited, I had a great time, and I have a lot of affection for the state of Texas. So
If you get down to our neck of the woods, you know
have
where
some
to
whiskey.
come.
Lake
Yeah,
That's
Jackson.
right. Absolutely.
We're gonna get down there.
All right. Well, we want to be respectful of your time, Daniel. I want to thank you so much for coming back on. It's a real pleasure talking to you and for you sharing your stories. And where can people find more information and find you?
Well, we do have our conference coming up. Unfortunately for us, it's a weekend after the barbecue, but it'll be August 16th in Washington, D.C. The theme this year is Blueprint for Peace. We've got a lot of great speakers. We've got the fantastic Colonel Douglas McGregor is going to join us again. The great intellectual Nassim Nicholas Taleb, the Black Swan, is going to join us. We have a good friend of mine, Max Blumenthal, and an even better friend of mine, his wife, Anya Parampil, are going to talk to us about their recent trip to Iran and what they saw there. We have Natalie Morris, who is the other half of the Redacted podcast, an enormously popular podcast with Clayton and Natalie Morris on YouTube. Clayton was a Fox News anchor who's gone on to become a very great independent journalist. So and I'm probably leaving someone out. I feel terrible right now, but it's a great lineup, great people getting together. As you guys know, you've been to a couple of them, I think, or at least one of them, and it's just all about great speeches. That's fun, but meeting great people, comparing notes. You never know what's going to come out of it, So it's just a great time. So if anyone's interested, go to ronpaulinstitute.org. It'll be like in blue letters toward the top where you can get those tickets. They're awfully cheap, guys. We've held it. Inflation is a killer, but we've held those prices for the last, I think, at least 3 years. So thankfully, we have some donors who are helping us make up the gap. But we want to keep the tickets low so people can show up and get together and keep this movement alive.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate your work and keep doing what you're doing. And you and Dr. Paul are huge inspirations for us and our show. And it's always fun talking to you, Daniel.
Love you guys. Take care. It's so great to see you again.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Jackman Radio. We will see you next time.